The Lane Kiffin soap opera enters another week, heading toward possibly a Saturday conclusion to this stay or go drama surrounding the Ole Miss football coach while his team pursues a college football playoff bid. Welcome into SEC Football Unfiltered, our podcast from the USA Today Network. Blake Toppmeyer alongside John Adams. We, of course, will discuss the hottest topic in the SEC, maybe in all of college football, which remains Lane Kiffin, how we are reading the thermometer of his movements, where he may end up. Also touch on some of the more notable rivalry week developments on this Thanksgiving week. Hope you all enjoy some turkey, some football, and the Kiffin soap opera. John, we have seen so much from Lane over the years that it's hard to be surprised by anything. I know you covered firsthand his exit from Tennessee after one season. So this latest saga surrounding Kiffin as he sort of holds hostage the Ole Miss program as it pursues a playoff bid, is this just sort of par for the course? Or even for Kiffin, does this reach new levels?
I think this has the potential to reach at the highest level, one of the highest in college football history for a coach, if he manages to leave his team for another program with his team on the brink of the playoffs and a chance to win a national championship. He's an unpredictable play caller. That serves him well on the sidelines, but he's also unpredictable in his career moves. You can't be sure. I was actually out of town when he left Tennessee that night in January, way back after the 2009 season. So I had a vacation, so I had to go to a friend's house in Florida and file a column on Deadline. I mean, that came out of nowhere, but that's how it's gone with him. Most coaches don't get fired on an airport tarmac like Lane did in Los Angeles when he was a USC coach. Nick Saban didn't want him around after he was considering a head coaching job at Florida Atlantic while he was still serving as offensive coordinator for Saban, an Alabama playoff-bound team. So, yeah, it's really hard to say. I'm not even certain that Lane knows what he's going to do yet.
Or if he thinks he knows, that could change 6 times between now and Saturday, which is the expected date of Lane announcing his future plans. It's like the LeBron James decision 2.0. I've suggested that College Game Day cut to Lane on his fishing boat on Saturday, and Layla, his ex-wife Layla, with whom he has reconciled and they're co-parenting their children, Layla has arranged 3 hats on the boat: Mississippi, LSU, and Florida. And Lane just casts a line into the pile of hats and hooks one and reels it in, and that's where he's going to be coaching next year.
I love that. I love that scenario. And
Uh-huh.
see, there we go with that unpredictability again. Not that many guys get back with their ex after their marital bliss has come to an end and they've gone their separate ways. So that's just another twist in the Lane Kiffin saga.
So I have a theory on this, John, and to be clear, this is just a theory. I'm not saying this is the facts. This is my theory, that Lane went into this thinking that he could sort of have his cake and eat it too, that maybe he could take another job and coach Ole Miss to the finish line. He was asked at his Monday press conference this week if he would like to coach this season to conclusion, sort of regardless of what happens otherwise. And he said, quote, "I never thought of doing anything different than that." The idea of coaching this season to its finish line. So I think my theory is that Lane thought he could maybe take another job and still coach Ole Miss in the playoff. And I think what he's finding out here with this Saturday deadline for him to reveal his decision is that if he thought that, he was probably naive in thinking that he could accept a job at an SEC rival like LSU, which is the number 2 rival for Ole Miss behind Mississippi State, or even a Florida, another SEC school, that he could take another job and that Ole Miss would be okay with him still coaching in the playoff. Now, Ole Miss has not come out and said that. They haven't said if Lane Kiffin takes another job, they won't let him coach in the playoff. But according to some reporting, and I think also interpreting this deadline, it would at least suggest that Ole Miss is at the very least entertaining the idea of, if Lane takes another job, not allowing him to coach in the playoff. What do you think of all that?
Well, I was covering the NCAA tournament way back in the early 90s. No, late 80s. I'm sorry, Michigan. When the Michigan coach, what was it? Michigan's coach, Bill Frieder?
Yeah, it was a famous line about Michigan man. A Michigan man will coach Michigan in
from
the
Bo
tournament.
Schembechler, the AD, and he
right.
wanted his assistant, Steve Fisher, who then turned around and led the team to a national championship. Had a successful career after that, went on and won at San Diego State too. So yeah, that certainly comes to mind. You've dealt with Lane a lot more than I have in recent years. Do you think he fully understands the ramifications of this decision he's about to make?
I don't think Lane knows what it's like to be a fan. I think Lane, if he leaves, all of us would say he's on the fast track to become the biggest villain in college football. Maybe not in college football history, but in the current state of college football, Lane would move to the top of the charts of being the biggest villain in the sport, bar none. I think that might surprise him a little bit, because coaches sometimes, and I think he's one of them, don't really know what it's like to be a fan. And you even heard it in Lane's Monday press conference. He said modern day athletes, they're not even hung up so much on who the coach is going to be next season. He said it's, quote, a different generation of guys. And he said in this generation of player, where players come and go every year and they make decisions based on finances, and they don't, think about wanting to pledge their allegiance to Old State U like they did in yesterday. They more don't worry about who the coach is going to be the following season. And that all may be true, but that's not the way fans are. Fans aren't changing their allegiance every year. They live and die and breathe and exist with this stuff. And if he leaves a playoff team, I do think he is possibly underestimating how vilified he is going to be, not just in Mississippi. He's going to be the biggest villain, the biggest heel in all of college football. And some would say, who cares, right? Big deal. Who cares what other people think of you? I'm telling you, Lane Kiffin cares what other people think of him. And I actually think most coaches do. They like to pretend that they don't read the message boards, that they don't read the tweets, that they don't read what you write. I mean, one thing we all know about Lane Kiffin, he reads the tweets. The man spends no small amount of time reading the tweets. So he will care what people will think about him. But he's also a master of the propaganda arts, and he would probably set quickly to work on trying to restore his image yet again. Now, I think it will be harder to do this time around if he were to vamoose a playoff team, possibly an 11-1 team.
Yeah, that is much more significant than what he did at Tennessee.
Yeah.
I thought when he left Tennessee in early 2010, Southern Cal was a better job. Tennessee's season was done. It was still in the process of recruiting. That was significant. And he had only been there 1 year, but USC is at the time was kind of one of the jobs. And he had been there as an assistant coach. So it wasn't, the move was stunning in a way, but it wouldn't be as abhorrent as this to the general populace. Lane back then held a press conference that night when he was leaving.
Which just tells you that these guys are kind of naive in some ways. Like, who holds a press conference on their way out the door? And then didn't it seem, I know you weren't there, you're saying you're on vacation, but like even going back and watching it, Didn't it seem like in the days and weeks and years that followed that maybe Lane was a little surprised at how vitriolic it got in Knoxville with him leaving? It's like, really?
Oh,
You were surprised? Have you met Vols fans?
it was, yeah, I was very much surprised that he was surprised.
Yeah.
He just didn't read the room. He was thinking, okay, I want to explain myself on the way out. And because and I think he genuinely liked being at Tennessee. I think he liked the fan base. He liked the program and thought he had a good future here and thought the program had great potential. And I think he thought he was being kind.
Yeah, and if
Uh,
he just explained to everyone, "Hey,
sure.
I'm leaving for my dream job. You guys all get it, right?" No, Vols fans didn't get it. They were burning stuff in the streets.
No, they didn't get it at all, and that's where he misses. He just didn't read the room, and I don't know if he's reading the room now.
But see, he moved around a lot as a kid. His dad was in coaching, obviously the great Monty Kiffin. And you might think like, well, he above all people should understand fandom. No, he understands moving around and having to reinvent yourself place after place after place and assimilate to a new crowd of people. That's what he understands. What he doesn't understand is being in one spot his entire life and living and dying with one program. That's what he doesn't get, and maybe he doesn't need to. The one thing of this is I'm sure of Lane Kiffin's not maybe in the court of public opinion, but in terms of his professional career, Lane Kiffin's not going to come out a loser in this deal. In one hand, he could stay in a great situation, which he's helped build at Ole Miss, where they've given him all the support he could ever ask for throughout his entire tenure, and he becomes an even more handsomely paid coach to stay at Ole Miss, and he's got a playoff team on his hands. The other option is he becomes the very handsomely paid coach of LSU or Florida. So Lane Kiffin's not the victim here. He's going to come out of this a winner no matter what he chooses. And I actually don't know how sorry I feel for Ole Miss, John, because if you do business with a renegade, don't be surprised when they prove themselves to be a renegade, right? But I mean, you do feel for the athletes a little bit, but to the athletes' credit, and we heard this from Ole Miss's star quarterback Trinidad Chambliss this week, they say that it's not that big of a distraction for them. And that might sound like a nice soundbite, but it's not believable. But actually, up to this point, even with all the turmoil, Ole Miss has been playing really well. So we'll see what happens this week in the Egg Bowl. But to this point, it really doesn't seem to have negatively affected the team.
I think Nick. I think Lane is very capable of selling his narrative to the players. You talked about how he perceives current day college football with players coming and going, coaches coming and going. So it's no big deal. I think that's a message he can deliver. It's one thing to do that now. It's quite another if your team is going in the playoff and you're not going. And we don't know how the selection committee will value this. Just a couple of years ago, when Florida State lost its quarterback to injury, it's out of the playoff. Mm-hmm. Committee said, no, this isn't the same team. Well, is Ole Miss without its head coach, a very competent head coach? Is it the same team?
What Boy, I would have a big problem with that. I mean, to me, this is different than being down to your third string quarterback. We saw Florida with its third string, Florida State, excuse me, with its third string quarterback 2 years ago in that situation you're talking about. And I thought the committee still should have taken Florida State because they earned it on the field with a 13-0 record. But we did see them play with a 13-0 quarterback, or excuse me, a third string quarterback.
Yes.
And they didn't look like the same team. They won the ACC championship, but they didn't look like the same team with a third string quarterback. We don't, for all we know, Ole Miss could play just as well without Lane Kiffin. So I would have a huge problem with the committee doing that. I mean, you're right. The committee could do it. The rules allow them to do it, but boy, that would be criminal if completely unjust if the committee took it out on this team, particularly if they win the Egg Bowl. Different story if they flop in the Egg Bowl. That's a different story. But if they win the Egg Bowl, boy, they should be hosting a first-round playoff game, I think, no matter who the coach is.
Well, I agree with you. I just don't trust selection committees.
Yeah, fair.
I really don't, and I don't see how anybody could. You just don't know. I hear there are too many changes from one press conference, one reveal to the next. I never know exactly what they value more in judging teams. But it would be awful if Ole Miss weren't allowed, if it won the game Friday, and wasn't allowed to play. But I just, I don't know if there's, I wonder if LSU's thought about this. Or Florida. Florida wants Lane Kiffin too, obviously. Have they thought about the other side of Lane Kiffin? They're looking at the coach who has rebuilt Ole Miss football and has it in the playoffs. They're looking at the guy who makes fun of his opposing coaches. He is fun. He's entertaining, and he also feels outstanding offenses. He's a terrific play caller. All of those things. That's the Lane Kiffin they're looking at. But there's another side of Lane. Are they thinking about that they could be on the other side of this at some point?
If you're LSU though, don't you think you're Margot Robbie? Like you think like, well, yeah, Lane left them. He
Yeah,
left Ole
I
Miss,
know.
but we're Margot Robbie. He's not ever leaving us. I mean, I'm not saying that,
Yeah,
that he wouldn't because it's Lane Kiffin. Like I said, he's a renegade, right? But if you're
yeah.
LSU, we know the way these people think. That you think he ain't leaving
Well,
us.
yeah, I was probably overthinking that, but they should. And
Mm.
another thing about this, Lane has never won a championship.
Or a playoff game.
No, I'm. How do we? This is not a young Nick Saban you're about to steal away from Ole Miss. This is a high profile guy that's won, and he's entertaining, but he hasn't won the biggest games. And that's something we hear all the time. That's why Penn State got rid of James Franklin. That's why LSU got rid of Brian Kelly. They didn't win a championship. They didn't win the game. Well, Lane Kiffin's never won the game.
True, and when
But
he did last year against Georgia, then he lost in the swamp to Florida, so he gave it right
yeah,
back. The one
yeah,
time he did win the
yes,
game, he gave it right back.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Of
guess the
course.
game, I'm saying championship.
But
Yeah.
of the coaches that LSU or Florida could reasonably hope to get, I mean, I think Lane Kiffin is understandably option A. But your point is a fair one, I think, of if he does this to Ole Miss, couldn't he do it to you? I think that's possible. Again, from those schools' perspective, I think they think, well, we're better than Ole Miss. He wouldn't do it to us, but never know with Lane Kiffin. Let me ask you this, though, John. Let's say he's going to take another job, and you're Ole Miss athletic director, Keith Carter, and you've done all you can to keep him. And you've tried to put this deadline in place, which I think is a smart move by Ole Miss. You can't let this drag out forever. Whatever the decision is, let the decision come after the Egg Bowl. But let's say it doesn't fall in your favor, and he's going to either LSU or Florida. You're Keith Carter, the AD at Ole Miss. Lane says to you, "Hey, I'm taking this other job, either LSU or Florida, but I would like to coach this team to the finish line. I'll keep my head in the game. I can handle it. I want to coach this team in the playoffs." You're Keith Carter. Do you let him do it?
Yes, I do.
You do. You swallow your pride and say,
Yeah.
it's best for this Ole Miss team if Lane coaches in it.
I think it's easy to sell that to your fan base too, is to say, and to your team. I really do, because you're saying, hey, we understand he's leaving, but he's been 6 years here, 6 years. He's built up the program to this level, and now we have a chance to go to an even higher level, something we haven't done in 60 years. I'd like to let him see this through, because I think we owe it to the players. The players have made this a great season, and I would like to give all of them the best opportunity to win. I don't think he would do that, but I
But
think
you
I
would.
would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to sell to the players actually than the fans. I think if Lane still has this locker room and the product on the field would suggest that he does, I think the players, maybe you could get them on board with this. I'm just envisioning, though, a Lane Kiffin who's LSU bound walking out of the tunnel in Oxford for a home playoff game. I'm not hearing cheers, John. I'm hearing boos in this scenario. I'm hearing a thunderous boo from the crowd at Ole Miss. That's a tough look, and I think all the time ADs should not worry so much about how it's going to look on Twitter, social media, and all that. But we know they do. Ugh, that would be a rough look. Your coach of your playoff team walking out to boos from the home crowd as they're getting ready to host first playoff game in program history. The way you could do it, I think, is if you had someone like Trinidad Chambliss, if you got him on board and he says, yeah, I want Lane coaching me for the playoffs. I don't care where he's coaching next year. And he goes out there in a press conference and says, look, folks, the players decided this is what we want. We hate that he's not going to be here next year. We don't necessarily agree with that, but this is what we want. We want him coaching this team in the playoff because we think we can win a national championship with him. Then maybe you could get the fans on. I think you need total buy-in from the players to even have a chance of that working.
Yeah, what I would do is as the AD, I would meet with the team.
See what they want.
And see what they want.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. And then if that's what they want, if they want him coaching it, wouldn't hurt if they go ahead and try to help you sell it to the public, you know.
Sure. Who would be if Lane left and you didn't want him coaching your team in the playoffs? Who would coach the team?
Could be quarterbacks coach Joe Judge, the former NFL coach who was fired from the Giants on staff there, coaches the quarterbacks. Could be Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator. I think I would let it be Joe Judge, and that way Golding can focus on calling the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Weiss Jr. could call the offense, and you let Joe Judge, who's been a head coach, not successfully. That's why he's on Lane Kiffin's staff, because he got fired from the NFL. But he's been a head coach. You let him handle those duties. You let the coordinators do what they've done. And that to me would be the leading alternative. But it's not, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place for sure. I want to get to other topics, John, but everybody wants a prediction, and I know it's dangerous terrain with Lane Kiffin. But hey, we've been wrong before. We kind of make our profession in it. Just stick around for our pick segments where we're wrong every week. But so let's go ahead and do it. Dangerous though it may be, a prediction. Where is Lane Kiffin coaching next season?
I ask myself, what would Margot Robbie do? And here's what she would do. She would think, hey, I'm Margot Robbie. Let me just check. She looks in the mirror and says, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm good. What I do, I'm good either way. And she would take the LSU job. That's what I think Lane will do.
I agree. It's without much conviction that I say I think Lane will be coaching LSU next season. And if he does that, I kind of don't think he will be coaching in the playoff. I think he would want to. And I sort of agree with you that I think it might be better for this Ole Miss team if he's coaching in the playoff. But I don't think he will be. I think Ole Miss, the decision makers there, may have a different feeling on that.
One more question. Do you think LSU, if Lane said, I want to coach in the playoff, Ole Miss wants me to coach, if you're LSU, do you say, okay, that's fine?
I think you do, just because you want him so bad. And you're thinking, hey, if the Ole Miss players love him that much that they want him coaching in the playoff, even if he's leaving, maybe some of those Ole Miss players with eligibility remaining will just follow him out the door to LSU. And oh, by the way, Ole Miss beat LSU this season. So if a few of those players followed him out the door, probably wouldn't be so bad for LSU, which is one reason why Ole Miss might not want him sticking around, is you don't want him recruiting your players to the job he's leaving for. But he could do that from afar as well. The other element of this, John, is, okay, let's say we're both predicting, maybe not without total conviction, but we're both predicting Lane to LSU. Let's play that out. Where does Florida turn? Where should they turn if they lose out on the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes? Eli Drinkwitz is a name that continues to be attached to that job and reporting. Both you and I have thrown some compliments at Brent Key at Georgia Tech. There's the Fish Man, Jed Fish, out there at Washington, the Florida alumnus. Wild card. Where are you turning if you're Florida?
Well, if you can't get Kiffin, I wouldn't be turning to Elijah Drinkowitz. I just don't think his body of work justifies that. We talked about big games. His record in big games just doesn't doesn't do anything to help sell him as a help him win a introductory press conference. That's what you want, a guy that can not just win but win big games. Honestly, I would go back in time and try and get James Franklin. That I, I just I don't think the
You,
Florida job is as good as the LSU job, but you know me, I would first make a call to Urban Meyer and say, Urban, it's yours if you want it. What can we do for you? And he says, Hey, are you crazy? I'd die on the sidelines. And you say, Okay, well, thanks. And maybe get him to recommend somebody. I don't think there's an obvious pick out there um, for if you can't get Lane Kiffin. And that's one of the reasons that he's so sought after. Because when you look at the rest of the field, there's not nobody really dazzles you. You have brought up Louisville coach Jeff Brom,
yeah, the
and
shine's coming off him. I might
yeah,
have to jump off that bandwagon, but no, I'm
well,
not jumping off yet. To me, that means now's a great time to get Jeff Brom. It's he's lost a few games at Louisville. He might be thinking, "Hey, is it time to move somewhere else?" I think he's done a great job going all the way back to Purdue. Now he hasn't looked the best the last couple weeks, but well,
he
body of work still looks good.
yeah, he's the team has been just racked with injuries.
Hmm.
I wouldn't hold that. I wouldn't look at a two games, and I wouldn't necessarily just look at what he's and say what he's done at Louisville. Oh, he came up short this year at Louisville, did win the conference championship. That doesn't mean that doesn't tell me what he might do at LSU or what he might do at Florida. Um,
Yeah,
so
I'm sticking in on that Brom bandwagon, particularly to Florida. I think he's maybe not the spiritual heir to Steve Spurrier, but he's an offensive minded guy. He's been a good quarterback developer throughout his career, that type of thing. So I think Brom, even with what's happened the last couple weeks, I think he would be pretty high up on my list for Florida. I'm wondering at Ole Miss, John. Let's say you're John Sumrall, who's like attached to 37 jobs right now. He's like the hottest name in the coaching carousel, not named Lane Kiffin. It seems like obviously John Sumrall at Tulane, leading a team toward the playoff, still has some work to do, but a Tulane team toward the playoff. If you're John Sumrall and Lane leaves Ole Miss, okay, and so Auburn is opened, and Summerall is believed to be a candidate at Auburn. And then Ole Miss comes open, and I believe Summerall is probably someone that Ole Miss would at least consider. Let's say you're Summerall and you could have your choice between those two. Lane had that choice 3 years ago, and he decided to stay at Ole Miss. If you're John Summerall and you can replace Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, or you can step into the Auburn situation, which one are you choosing?
I would choose Auburn because I think Auburn is more desperate.
And
Uh,
desperation in this case is a good thing.
yeah, desperation is a good thing because it's going to pay you a lot. It really needs to win. It's a tough job because you're somewhat in the shadow of Alabama. But we've seen it in the past. When Auburn's good, it's very good. Different coaches have won there. Gene Chizik, a national title. Tommy Tuberville had a unbeaten season. Should have been able to play for a national championship. And then Gus Malzahn played for a national championship, was right there for the taking. He couldn't finish it off against Florida State. But yeah, I would try. I think that's where he will go, is to Auburn. I think Auburn has plenty NIL money. And if it hires a coach it can believe in, I think it will be willing to spend. And that's where the desperation comes. If you got a desperate fan base, you've got a generous fan base.
Mm.
So I would go to now look at Ole Miss.
I also don't know. Excuse me, John. I don't know
Uh,
if you want to be the guy to follow Kiffin at Ole Miss. The old cliche is you never want to be the
sure.
guy to follow the guy. And even though Lane if he leaves, will have done so without a national championship at Ole Miss. He's also would be leaving as the most successful coach since Johnny Vaught. Now, he will have made himself a villain on the way out the door, but Ole Miss fans have tasted success under Kiffin. I don't know that you want to be the guy to come in on the heels of that. Much better, I think, in some ways, to come in on the heels of Brian Harsin and Hugh Freeze, which led Auburn on the worst 5-year run, maybe of all time. I don't know. You'd have to go back before either of us were alive, probably, to find a run as bad as these past 5 years have been for Auburn, in so much as one ever existed. So, do you want to be the guy to follow the guy at Ole Miss, or do you want to be the guy to follow Brian Harsin or Hugh Freeze at Auburn? That Auburn situation suddenly maybe looking a little better as you look at it in that light.
I agree. I'd like to go back to Florida for a second, though. I really like Brent Key. I know his team lost a big game to Pitt last week, but I think what he's done at Georgia Tech is kind of remarkable, because you're playing in the shadow of the Bulldogs and Kirby Smart in the same state, 70 miles down the road. I think what he's built there is significant. When you go back, when you think about Florida's success, you think about Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier, and those are the guys that built Florida into at least a mini dynasty, certainly a dynasty with Spurrier. Meyer wasn't there that long, but I go back. Florida, things first changed at Florida under Charlie Pell. This is back in the late 70s. And Charlie Pell was kind of a tough guy. He changed the culture. All the coaches back in those days, people didn't talk about changing this culture, but Florida was known as a party school, which doesn't often always make for a great football school if your players are partying too much. But that was kind of the reputation back then. And Charlie Pell came in there, and he broke a lot of NCAA rules, which ultimately led to his demise. But he built a different kind of program there and had kind of success there that nobody else had had. It just didn't last. It wasn't sustainable because of the violations and all he did along the way. But it wouldn't matter in NIL. I would really like Brent Key at Florida. I'm not sure you might not could sell that right away to the fan base, but I wouldn't care about that if I believed in him, and I think he would do well there.
Yeah, I think he needs to be toward the top of the list if Florida can't reel in Lane Kiffin. All right, rival week, John, and I want to touch on a few hypothetical developments here. So as always, we're recording this before Tuesday night's CFP rankings update comes out. So depending on when you're listening to this, you maybe have seen the latest rankings. John and I have not, although we're not anticipating a lot of change and movement within the top 10 or 12, because chalk pretty much held in what was a pretty pathetic slate of week 13 games. So let's just engage me with a couple hypotheticals, John. And I know, unless something has changed that I'm aware of, you do not possess a crystal ball that allows you to predict the future, do you?
I tell you what, though, how many people have you heard say, I don't deal in hypotheticals? I deal in hypotheticals.
Oh, yeah.
You do too.
We love those
hypotheticals. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Bring it on.
All right, bring it on. I've posited, John, that Alabama winning the Iron Bowl does not clinch a playoff bid for the Tide, because if BYU won the Big 12, that would turn the Big 12 into a two-bid league. And then if Alabama lost the SEC championship, their third loss this season, they could be left on the cutting room floor of the playoff. So, but what I'm asking you is, I'm not asking you to speculate or project who's going to win the Big 12 championship. Just simply put, if Alabama wins the Iron Bowl, do you think they're going to be in the playoff?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Proceeding down the list. If Vanderbilt beats Tennessee in Neyland Stadium, Vanderbilt would then be 10-2 on Selection Sunday. We've seen that the bubble is looking somewhat crowded at the moment. We've talked past few weeks. Could there be room for Vanderbilt? Would there not be room for Vanderbilt? Without knowing what may happen elsewhere, if Vanderbilt wins in Knoxville on Saturday, do you think Vanderbilt will be in the playoff?
No,
not going to be room for 10-2 Vanderbilt.
And that's unfortunate that a 10-2 SEC team, no matter who it is, and particularly with all of Vanderbilt's less than star-studded history, would be good enough record-wise to make the playoff. That's unfortunate, but I don't think it will unless other games fall Vanderbilt's way.
Right. Okay, one more for you. Texas is maybe the only 3-loss team right now that is still in the hunt. Now, that doesn't mean you personally have to believe that you would take them, but I think just given reality, Texas is a 3-loss team that is in the hunt still at the moment. To have any chance, they have to beat undefeated Texas A&M at home on Black Friday. Texas A&M will be coming in at 11-0, valued by the committee, maybe not valued as much as those Big Ten teams, but valued by the committee. If Texas beats Texas A&M, gets to 9-3, will there be room for Texas in the playoff? Is Texas in at 9-3?
No.
I think you're probably right on. I think I agree with you on all those, John, because if Alabama wins the Iron Bowl, I can talk as long as I want about how BYU could play spoiler, but I don't think BYU is going to win the Big 12 championship. I think Texas Tech is. So I think if Alabama wins, it will be fine. It's not an automatic, but I think it will be fine come Selection Sunday. So I agree with that. With Vanderbilt, I just think there's not going to be enough room for Vanderbilt. There may not be enough room for a Miami team that beat Notre Dame. So I don't think there's going to be enough room for 10-2 Vanderbilt. And I think I agree with you on 9-3 Texas. There probably not being room for Texas, even though they would have really one of the best wins of the season against Texas A&M. And I think of the two, the committee may pick Texas over Vanderbilt, despite the record disparity, because Texas beat Vanderbilt. Now, the committee only cares about head-to-head when they want to. Not always, but when they want to, they do. But I think Texas might...
You're so right. Yeah.
But I think Texas might have a better shot than Vanderbilt. But I think on down the line, I'm with you. But a word on Texas, John. What's so interesting is if Texas had scheduled someone other than Ohio State in week 1, if they had scheduled Slappy University, the weakest Power 4 team they could find, and they beat Texas A&M, they would be 10-2, and I think they absolutely would be in the playoff despite that loss in the Swamp, because their final submission would be a win over undefeated Texas A&M, and they'd be at 10-2. And that is, I think that's unfortunate, because I'm not going to give a Sermon on the Mount of why I think 9-3 Texas should be in, but I do like when teams play compelling non-conference games. And then to see a team get punished on the backside and not be in because they're 9-3, because in part because they scheduled the defending national champions Ohio State in week 1 in Columbus. I mean, I think that's, at that point, it's like we want these teams to play these marquee non-conference games, and then yet when they do and they lose, then it's held against them to the degree that that you could beat an 11-0 team in Thanksgiving week and not make the playoffs. So I agree with you; they wouldn't be in. I also have a little bit of a hard time with that because they did challenge themselves and play Ohio State in week 1. To me, this is a different situation than the 9-3 teams from the SEC last year. Last year, Alabama was 9-3. Well, it played a bad Wisconsin team as its non-conference game. Ole Miss was 9-3. Well, it lost to Kentucky on its home field and played, I believe it was Wake Forest in the non-conference. Now, South Carolina beat Clemson in the non-conference, so that was a little bit of a different story. But none of those teams played anyone to the degree of defending national champion Ohio State in their own building. And so I do think that Texas at least merits some strong consideration if they were to close with a win against undefeated Texas A&M.
Well, let's look at another team that could end up 9-3 if things don't go well. Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
What if
Which
Oklahoma?
beat Michigan in the non-conference?
Yes, that's my point. Oklahoma, um, I just don't see it losing to LSU, but it could. And if it did, and it finished 9-3, one of the toughest schedules in the country, and also went out of its way, as you said, and played Michigan. Um, I I would probably take Oklahoma over a 3-loss Oklahoma team over a 2-loss Vanderbilt team, because Vanderbilt's schedule is just not comparable to what the Sooners have played.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I also think, and sounds like you're maybe agreeing with me. If they do lose to LSU, I don't think the committee would do that. I think Oklahoma's out with a loss at LSU. Should they be out? Maybe not. Um, it's just
Well,
it's hard getting over losing that LSU with an interim coach that's looked kind of dead in the water the last several
yeah,
weeks now.
barely beat Western Kentucky at home. But here's another thing to me that you should consider with Oklahoma is it lost to Texas playing a quarterback who clearly was not 100%. John Mateer, because of the hand injury and surgery, he was rushed back into the fray. Uh, I think you should consider that. And I watched him play before the injury and after. And he does not throw the ball as well after as he did before. I don't care how fine they say his hand is, he doesn't throw it as accurately, particularly on longer throws. So to have overcome that to me speaks to how well Oklahoma has played. And I think the committee should consider things like that.
But wouldn't that be a case not to put Oklahoma in then if John Mateer's not
Yeah,
the same quarterback?
yeah, but it wasn't the same quarterback, but it still prevailed. It still won all of those games. And I'm saying that he was an even worse quarterback when he first came back against Texas.
Mm-hmm.
That was his worst game. He looked the worst in that game. Uh, Maybe we could bring in a few medical specialists and address his condition and performances before the selection committee.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma's going to have a hard time making a case if it loses at home to LSU, just like I think Texas is going to have a hard time. Texas' biggest problem is that game got so ugly, well, beyond the fact that it's lost 3 games, and we know how much this committee gets hung up on record, but it didn't just lose to Georgia. The fourth quarter got so ugly, it can't say, oh, that's a quote unquote good loss.
No.
When you get trounced in the way you did in the fourth quarter, I don't think you get to call that a good loss. That's going to be the hurdle in Texas's way beyond the record, is the fact that it was ugly by the time the final buzzer sounded in Athens a couple weeks ago, and no matter what the score is, if Oklahoma loses to LSU, that's ugly on your home field as well. So I think Oklahoma better win. Speaking of someone who better win, John, how about this moment for Kalen Deboer in the Iron Bowl? I mean, it's like Captain Obvious to say this is the most important game of Kalen Deboer's tenure. I mean, yes, of course it is. He can't lose the Iron Bowl and blow a playoff opportunity and lose to an interim coach. I mean, I don't think that's going to force Alabama to take action on him, but in the minds of the fan base, I think if Kalen Deboer loses this Iron Bowl, blows a trip to the SEC championship, blows a playoff bid, fan base will fire him mentally, right there on Saturday night. So yeah, it's Captain Obvious to say this game is huge for Kalen Deboer. But what do you think that would mean for him if they were to lose Saturday? Like, is he cooked at that point? Is it like you better start looking around to see if you can maybe take one of these jobs that are open, throw your hat in the ring at the final hour and say, maybe I want to get out of Dodge here in Alabama, or you just ride this out at Alabama and come what may next season?
I think he would ride it out because I think he's going. Kalen DeBoer was in a terrific situation at Washington, and he couldn't resist the lure of the Alabama job.
Mm-hmm.
which won all those national titles under Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. He wanted to join the party and thinking, well, if I can win this much at Washington, well, wait till you see what I do at a place like Alabama. Well, he could go to Penn State, and that would be, in a way, an easier job. But he had a better situation in a way.
An easier situation, yeah.
He had an easier situation at Washington. He just played for a national championship there. Took a program that was floundering and turned it into a team playing for national championship. So he'd really kind of look foolish if now he turned around and said, oh, okay, I guess I made a mistake leaving Washington. I'll just go to Penn State. So I don't think he would do that.
So you think he's going to ride it out at Alabama? I think so,
Yes.
too. I know there's some internet noise out there. Whatever, there's internet noise about everybody these days. Probably internet noise about you and I, John, I'm sure, on that app that Elon Musk runs. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think Kalen DeBoer marches on. But boy, I don't know what the Q score is, the popularity meter for Kalen DeBoer is in Alabama right at this moment. I know it's going to take a big tumble if he loses the Iron Bowl. On the flip side of that, I mean, this could still go down as a good season for Alabama. I don't think the die is cast that this year will go down in the bus column, and I don't even think he needs to win a national championship for this to go down as a good season. He needs to win the Iron Bowl. He needs to get into the playoff, and winning a playoff game or two would certainly go a long way as well. But this is, kind of a Jekyll and Hyde Alabama team. Had all those turnovers at Oklahoma, factored in the loss, had the inexplicable loss to Florida State now. But in other moments, Alabama is really, really good.
Well, I believe in them against Auburn. Auburn's playing a freshman quarterback, their third quarterback, their third choice. And yeah, he ran the ball great in the last game against Eastern Illinois or whatever team they were playing. No, I've got Alabama played Eastern Illinois. It's hard to keep up with these teams. That last week's schedule was ridiculous. Mercer, I guess, is whom Auburn beat. Am I right on that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure we get that right. It's crucial to the success of our podcast and our credibility, which is pretty much shot anyway. But I just don't think playing Auburn, Alabama, there's been tremendous upsets in this series, but I just don't see this being one of them. I just think Alabama is better overall than Auburn, and I think it will prevail. But since we're playing hypotheticals, let me give you one more. Let's say Kalen DeBoer does just what you said. Talks to his agent, said, hey, make a call. See how much they like me at Penn State in Happy Valley. How happy
that agent, by the way, as you know, John, but for our listeners, Jimmy Sexton. So
Jimmy
Sexton making a phone call. That would come as no surprise.
Golly, I wouldn't have thought that. Well, yeah, so he checks out Penn State and he said, man, they love you. So Kalen DeBoer heads off to Penn State. Kiffin takes the LSU job. Eli Drakowitz from Missouri goes to Florida. Then we got Missouri, Alabama,
Auburn, Ole Miss open.
Ole Miss all open. I mean, you've got 7 schools. Almost half the league would be looking for coaches. That I can even present that as a possibility tells you what kind of season this has been. And maybe we've got more seasons like this coming soon. The league will go to a 9-game schedule next year.
Oh, boy. Mm-hmm. Oh, boy. All right. I'm sure there'll be plenty more to discuss on Alabama in the weeks to come. Maybe on Penn State, too. We've been very interested in that job. Before we get to our picks, John, since I mentioned Penn State, sort of a thought on them. Final thought before we get to our picks. I think that the biggest winner of this coaching carousel will be whoever lands Lane Kiffin. I think the second biggest winner will be the coach who lands the Penn State job. I think that's actually a really good job because it doesn't have the schedule that you're going to have at LSU or Florida. Maybe not the expectations of LSU. Remember, James Franklin didn't get fired because he couldn't beat Ohio State. Penn State was fine with him losing to Ohio State every year. Maybe not fine, but they accepted it. He got fired because he lost to UCLA and Northwestern. I think whoever gets the Penn State job, that's going to be one of the top winners of this coaching carousel. You get a really good job without having the schedule or the pressures that you'd have at, say, LSU or to a different degree, even Florida.
Second biggest winner could be James Franklin. He'll have two
Ooh.
schools paying him. Two schools, Penn State and Virginia Tech. I think Penn State will have to pay him $9 million.
Yeah.
That's a chump change in college football world, but he's getting paid by Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is seemingly pledged to invest more in its program. Low pressure there. You talk about pressure at Penn State not being as high as other places. It will be even less at Virginia Tech. It's far removed from big-time college football. And I think he's a good coach. I think the players play hard for him. So I think he could be. I think he came out of this really well.
No, I think that's a good shout out there. That was one I wasn't thinking about in the moment, but you're absolutely right. I think James Franklin and even Virginia Tech could call themselves winners of this.
Oh yeah, definitely. Those are 2 and 3, however you want to rank them behind whoever gets Lane Kiffin.
Good points. All right. Speaking of winners, we were winners last week in our picks, John. We usually make fun of ourselves, and rightfully so. But lo and behold, I went 4-1 last week, and so now for the season, I am 31 and 34, still 3 games below 500. You went 3-2. You are above 500 at 33 and 32. You have a 2-game lead on me. Drama, as we both hover around the 500 mark. All right. As our leader, John, how about your picks?
Okay. I mentioned how much I like Brent Key as a candidate for the Florida job, but I like him at Georgia Tech, even though they lost to Pitt last week. Getting 13.5 points against Georgia. Is that the line you have? Is that what
12 as we record this, it's 12.5, John. I hate to break your spirit.
Okay. Well, I still like Georgia Tech getting those points. It took Georgia 8 overtimes to beat Georgia Tech last year. This game will bring out the very best in Georgia Tech. And again, I think Brent Key is a good coach. I think that'll be a really good game. Next, I don't have much faith in, well, actually, I don't have faith in any of these other picks. But I'll take Missouri and give 2.5.
Right. Missouri on the road.
Is that the line you have? Yeah.
That's the line I have on the road at 0-7 in the conference. Arkansas, 2-9 overall. Arkansas, Missouri, a 2.5 point road favorite.
Yeah. Arkansas, it's competitive. It comes close a lot of times, but a 3-point game, it loses that. And I think that's what this very well could be. Yeah, it'll do. Yeah. And Bobby Petrino said, man, if I had a defense, you let me build this whole program instead of just handling the offense. You want me back as your head guy. We hadn't even talked about that job. Does anybody care about that job, by the way?
Kane Womack, the Alabama defensive coordinator, might care about that job.
Okay. All right. And then I'll take Alabama. And the line I have is 5.5. Is that changed?
It has changed. It's now 6.5.
Ooh.
Scaring you off?
A little bit. Yeah. Let me come back to that one. Okay. How about Tennessee and Vanderbilt? I've got Tennessee minus 2.5.
You're right on there.
I'll take Tennessee there.
Crushing the spirit of the Doors.
Gosh.
You've done it many times before.
Wow.
Not this season, though. You've really You've really shown you can evolve, as I know, John. That comes as no surprise to me, but
No,
Vanderbilt fans might be shocked that you've evolved your
I know.
your
I'm
thoughts on the
evolving.
doors.
I'm evolving as we talk, and so I'm going to I'm just going to stick with Alabama. I wanted
Okay.
to evolve to somebody else, but I'm going to stick with Alabama. 6.5. That's a tough one, but
What's your lock of the week? Who's playing in the MAC that's got your eye?
going back to the MAC, love that league. Oh, such an attractive game Tuesday. You don't have to stay up late to watch it. 4:30 kickoff on the ESPN. Bowling Green taking on my favorite program, University of Massachusetts.
I know you're not going to take the points, John. You're laying
No,
the points.
I'm giving the points. These are
Yeah.
the two worst teams in the league, but UMass is a different kind of bad. Uh, Bowling Green, a little inside info. Bowling Green has a really good offensive line, can run the ball. UMass is vulnerable to the run, and also has no offense whatsoever.
I just zoned out when you started to break down the X's.
Yeah, I could tell. I looked
That,
at it's like, yeah, you could see, yeah, you were thinking like, what are we eating for Thanksgiving?
yeah.
Yeah, you were just gone.
Boy, you've
I knew
just
that.
UMass has just given up hope of having any home fans for that one. Having a 4:30 Eastern time game on a Tuesday night. That is, with an 0-11 team you're trotting out there. I would say that's tailor made for the friends and family crowd, but I don't. My family doesn't like me that much. If I was playing at 4:30 on a Tuesday on a winless team, my family would say, "Let us know what happens."
I think here was the thinking, and with UMass on that one, said, look, people are wanting to get an early start for Thanksgiving. They'll be out of here on Wednesday. They won't be here this weekend. A lot of big games going on that weekend, and nobody's going to want to watch this. Let's serve it up to them early on a Tuesday.
You will
Early
be
kickoff.
feasting upon that. Your editor there
Yes.
in Knoxville
Yeah.
say, "John, you got a column coming?" You're like, "I'm watching this 4:30 tilt on ESPNU, UMass, seeing if they can close out an 0-12 season."
Get back to you on that.
Yeah. The home crowd for UMass at their last home game, John, 6,155, 6,155, 6,155. You think
There's
they'll?
absolutely no way there were that many people there.
No, and there's absolutely no way they're going to have that 4:30 on a Tuesday. But I know you'll be watching.
Yes, I will.
All right, here are my 4 SEC picks plus a lock as I try to close this 2-game lead you have. Despite all the quote unquote noise and drama surrounding Ole Miss, and I know the Egg Bowl, literally anything can happen in the Egg Bowl, including a player impersonating a canine, urinating on the field, and getting his coach fired. Yes, anything can happen in the Egg Bowl, but I'm going to take Ole Miss, give the 6.5 points. I trust this team. They've been pretty locked in, even with all this drama. So I'm going to say they win by a touchdown or more. Take the Rebels. Moving on, I, like you, am taking Missouri, giving the 2.5 points. Arkansas, they've been sort of the kings of the 3-point loss. If they lose by 3 points, as you said, that's good enough for us. Missouri will have the cover.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yep, we'll take it. Oklahoma hosting LSU. I think there's going to be no drama on Selection Sunday with Oklahoma. None of this. Oh, could they get in at 9-3? I think they win. I'm not sure LSU will cross midfield. I will give the 10.5 points and take Oklahoma to roll and clinch their playoff bid. I'm going against you on the Iron Bowl. Boy, I can't believe I'm going Auburn, but maybe I'm going more the Jordan Hare crowd, and maybe I'm going with don't totally trust Kalen DeBoer's Alabama on the road. I think Alabama wins, but I think it could be close Saturday night on the Plains. So I will pocket those 6.5 points that Auburn is getting, and I will take the underdog Tigers. And my lock of the week, John, I found I found one featuring the little guy. Normally, I stay away from those G5 picks and let you feast upon them. But Kennesaw State, coached by former Tennessee Vols assistant Jerry Mack, is the pride of Conference USA this year. Kennesaw State is a 2.5-point road favorite against Liberty. Liberty might need to bring Hugh Freeze back because it has fallen on hard times. And so Kennesaw State on the road, 2.5-point favorite. That's fine. They're going to do what Missouri's going to do and win by at least a field goal. So I will take Kennesaw State, which is in first place, I believe, in the Conference USA standings, to live up to their record and cover the spread against Liberty.
Well, I was kind of ahead of the game on Kennesaw State.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you were picking a game involving them, weren't you?
Yeah, I won a game with them. It was very close, though. Wasn't real pleased with the play calling, but I like that pick, though. If I wasn't so infatuated with UMass and its total ineptitude, I might look that way.
Total ineptitude. A lot to be thankful for this holiday season. We're thankful for our listeners. Hope you enjoy some good food on the holiday, some good games this weekend, and join us next week as we're back on SEC Football Unfiltered.